the button-eyed thing. It started at a yard sale. Nina was 23, newly moved into a rented duplex on the edge of town. Her life was quiet, nearly too quiet after leaving behind the whirlwind of college and a toxic relationship she'd let drag on far too long. She wanted a fresh start, a place to breathe, drink cheap wine in pajamas, and fall asleep to old horror movies without judgment. The yard sale was on a cul-de-sac just off Willow Lane. A weathered woman with silver braids and a smoker's cough ran it, offering trinkets laid out on folding tables under a sun-bleached tarp. Most of the items were junk: porcelain figurines missing heads, stained paperback novels, VHS tapes with no covers. But Nina liked junk. Then she saw it. Sitting among a pile of threadbare stuffed animals was a doll, small, handmade, like something from a forgotten craft fair. The body was stitched from burlap, the arms long and slightly disproportionate, and its head a perfect oval. Its face was simple: a crooked stitched mouth, a nose made of twine, and two large mismatched black buttons for eyes. One button was cracked down the middle, the other shiny and pristine. It wore a faded cotton dress, and pinned to its chest was a tiny brass key. Something about it made Nina's stomach twist. Not fear, exactly. More, a sharp tug of curiosity. "How much for the doll?" she asked. The old woman looked up sharply from her cigarette, her eyes narrowing. "That one? $1. "That's it?" The woman shrugged. "If you want it, take it. Just don't come bringing it back." Nina gave a nervous laugh and handed her a crumpled bill. The woman didn't even offer a bag. That was a Friday. The doll sat on a shelf in Nina's living room, between a ceramic skull and a dusty copy of The Shining. It added just the right amount of weird to her space, and Nina liked weird. But that night, as she lay in bed with her laptop playing an old episode of The Twilight Zone, she thought she heard something, a soft scraping, like burlap on wood. She muted the laptop and listened. Nothing. "Old house," she muttered and rolled over. In the morning, the doll was on the coffee table. Nina blinked at it, bleary-eyed. "Weird," she said aloud. "I must have moved it and forgot." She set it back on the shelf and went about her day. By Sunday night, things felt different. The air in the duplex seemed heavier. She'd walk into a room and feel like she was being watched. At first, she chalked it up to loneliness. She hadn't made many friends since moving, and the silence was sometimes oppressive. But the doll kept moving. Once it was on the floor near the door. Another time it was perched on the kitchen counter, facing the hallway. Nina set up her phone to record overnight, laughing nervously at herself. "If this is an elaborate prank by the universe, I better get it on camera." The next morning, the footage was gone, deleted. When she tried to open the file, a black screen blinked at her. Then, just for a second, an image flickered. Something standing in the corner of the room, too tall to be the doll, too thin to be a person. She screamed and threw the phone across the room. By the end of the week, Nina hadn't slept more than a few hours a night. The doll now sat on the nightstand, no matter where she left it. Once she'd buried it in a storage bin in the closet, taped it shut. The next morning, it was back, sitting cross-legged beside her bed. And then came the dreams. Always the same. Dark corridors, the sound of soft, childlike laughter, and those button eyes, unblinking and cold. Sometimes she'd wake up with scratches down her arms or the smell of soil on her sheets. Once there was something under her bed that whispered her name in a voice like crackling leaves. Nina started losing time. She'd find herself staring into space, hours gone. She forgot to eat, to shower. She called out sick more than once. She tried throwing the doll away, drove 5 miles out of town, dumped it in a dumpster behind an abandoned gas station. It was back on the shelf by nightfall. She even burned it. soaked it in lighter fluid in the backyard fire pit, and watched it curl and blacken. The next morning it was whole again, though the buttons looked different, sharper, more knowing. Nina snapped. She drove to the old woman's house on Willow Lane, fists clenched on the wheel. The house was there, but different. Windows boarded, the grass tall and gray. A neighbor told her the house had been empty for 6 years. The woman who lived there had died in 2019. Left all her junk behind, the man said. Some of it still pops up at estate sales. Probably cursed, knowing her. That night, Nina sat on her bed, the doll on her lap, and spoke to it. "What do you want?" The doll stared. "I didn't mean to. Whatever this is, I didn't ask for it." The lamp flickered. The room went cold. Then the doll's head turned, slowly, deliberately, toward her. That was the last night Nina stayed in the house. She left the doll on a church's donation steps downtown. She didn't look back, didn't say goodbye. Nina moved again, changed her name, blocked the past like a bad dream. Her health returned. The shadows faded. Life, it seemed, resumed. But in a thrift store in a different town, far away from Willow Lane, there's a shelf near the back. On it, beneath a faded teddy bear and a cracked porcelain clown, sits a handmade doll. Its body is burlap, its eyes mismatched buttons, and pinned to its chest is a tiny brass key. The tag says, $1, no refunds.